I made a game when I was 13 and nearly everyone loved it.
Wait, what?
Most of the critics just said the puzzles were too hard. So, I guess my game's pretty much a masterpiece. Well, not exactly. In this video, we're gonna find out what I did to make people like the game, we're gonna criticize it harsher than anyone has before, and at the end, we're gonna see if I could ever do it again. First, let's set the stage. I started development at 13 and finished at 16. I used RPGMaker MZ, which made the whole programming thing a heck of a lot easier, though it did impose some other limitations on what you can make.
It's still the best RPG maker, though.
Also, prior to this game, I had made a ton of semi-games, one full game, and had dedicated my entire channel at that time to making RPG Maker related videos, so I was coming in with quite a bit of experience with the engine. That said, I still only had the life experience of a 13-year-old. Let's see how I did.
But before you play the game, you see the store page. But before even that, you see the header art, which intelligently uses empty space to draw curiosity, as well as red colors and glow to evoke danger and warning. Actually, middle school me just did it because he thought it looked cool and I didn't have to buy new art. But hey, it worked out pretty good, right?
That said, I actually deliberately made the trailer in the unconventional way I did, which will leave a lot of developers scratching their head. I curse, I don't show gameplay, I make digs at other games, it's like a YouTube video. But I did that on purpose. See, my game is pretty short. A trailer would just end up giving most things away. Also, RPG Maker game trailers tend to just be walking, which is boring, and I also took a dig at that in my trailer. See, in my opinion, that works better. It builds an honest connection between a possible player and myself, which I think makes them more likely to play. Or at least it confuses them so much that they have to play to satiate their curiosity.
I'm gonna have to call you back.
Either way, it works out for me.
Next up, the story, or at least the fourth version of the story that actually made it into the final version. I never actually wrote down the game's story anywhere outside of the game engine. It just kind of existed in my head. While I don't recommend that, if you're hesitant to start making your first game just because you don't have the story all worked out yet, don't be. It doesn't have to be perfect, ever, really, and you can also just rewrite the story whenever you want. It's your first game, who cares? Now, it was not my first game, but do as I say, not as I do. Anyways, here's Amy summarized linearly, though just remember that the game actually plays out non-linearly, so it's 10 times more confusing. Also, content warning, this game, like all good RPG Maker horror games, deals with some really heavy themes, like child abuse, suicide, depression, and there's a lot of gore and blood.
When Amy was really young, she saw her dad kill her aunt, and then he somehow manipulated her into thinking he didn't do anything wrong. From that point on, he trained Amy to be a hitman. Just like him. Yes, that's a real plot point, but just for me, take it as seriously as you can for a second. That means he raised his daughter to never get close to anyone, plus she gets that mental anguish from all the random killing, so that's a 1-2 double wombo combo knockout. It has some interesting applications if you can ignore the goofy mental image of a high school girl carrying out professional hitman duties in her school uniform.
Anyways, because of what she did with her dad, Amy never really lets anyone into her heart. When trying to get closer to Amy outside of school, her friends start to notice that she never really opens up. In hindsight, I probably could have introduced this plot point just a little more gradually.
One day, Amy is told that her next target will be one of her best friends, Thomas. Why did someone want to assassinate a high schooler? I don't know, because he's ginger. There, that's canon now. So Amy kills him, so that sucks. For some reason, I made his assassination a goofy game show. I don't know why, but it's kind of quirky and fun, so whatever. Killing Thomas was the last straw, so she tries to rebel against her dad, but he just gaslight gatekeep girl bosses again. So Amy, filled with grief and regret, decides to take. But as many survivors report, halfway through the attempt, Amy regrets it. Death is not the answer, and in Amy's case especially, it does not fix any of the wrongs in her life. In fact, it just kind of makes all the murdering pointless. The best she can do for them is try to live a better life, and so she tries to live. But it's too late. Amy lies dying on a hospital bed that she somehow got to, I don't know. The whole game takes place in Amy's mind as she's lying on this hospital bed. It's kind of a mishmash of flashbacks, memories, dreams, regrets. Basically, it's tough to follow. The main thing that's happening in the hospital bed, though, is that Amy's reflecting on her life. At first, it's only the really good parts, the friends she made, the wonderful experiences she had. She tries to ignore both what she suffered and what she made other people suffer, but slowly,
it starts to creep back in. The dream world of her dying mind begins to crumble as the bad thoughts and depression manifest themselves as little evil blue guys for some reason. They torment her, her friend, and her teacher, who's like a maternal figure, even though her real mom is still alive and in her life and seems to care about her a lot. In hindsight, I'm not quite sure why I included Amy having a real mom who's supportive and loving. That just kind of takes away from the teacher's entire role in the story.
Anyways, the main point of the game is about coming to terms with reality. It's about accepting the mistakes of the past and being honest with yourself and those you love so life can move on. I think it's still a genuinely good message, and it's mostly well written in game. Some parts are confusing and tough to follow, but I also throw subtlety out the window at some points and just directly state plot points, so that helps keep the game from being too confusing. I think the underlying story is very interesting, honest, and sympathetic, especially for a middle schooler. There's bits that don't make sense, like this random dancing mummy scene, but if you ignore the specifics and look at the wider context of the scene and what I was trying to do, you can sorta, kinda cope and make it make sense? Context. So here Amy has been separated from the group and is tormented by something that's supposed to be terrifying, so that when she's reunited with the group in a little bit, she's so relieved to be away from this extremely terrifying thing scaring the blue guys that for the first time she fully appreciates her friend and teacher's support. I think I have the right idea, but really bad execution at some points, and that kind of is a theme throughout the game. For example, the number one thing I struggle to execute on is horror. During the reunited scene, you're standing on a nice sunny balcony with petals flowing by, and then you step into the next screen and there's a delayed jump scare to a bunch of goofy shadow guys. I don't even know why I used the shadow guys here. Before, I was using them in flashbacks to represent random people who didn't really matter to the scene but added some flavor to the visuals. Or why am I using them here? And why are they walking in a circle? And why does stepping on them make the screen flash red but you don't take damage? There isn't even a health system in the game. Also, if you walk back up to the previous scene, everything breaks. How did I not catch that one? That about sums up the horror in this game. It's never really anything scary. It's just kind of random things happen, and then there's a lot of blood and swearing. Look, I even included these little star icons to show you when there's gonna be a jump scare. It kind of makes the warning at the start feel a little extra goofy, but I guess better safe than sorry. Actually, though, the lack of horror is a big problem with Amy. There are various scenes where Amy has a complete breakdown over how terrifying her surroundings are, and I think this fits into her being an unwilling hitman racked with grief and metaphor. Plus, I mean, if you were randomly transported to this with a bunch of little blue guys running around eating disembodied heads, I mean, you'd be pretty scared too. But that's the thing, because the horror is overly edgy and things just kind of happen like that without much suspense, these breakdowns feel rushed and overdramatic because there's a disconnect between what Amy is feeling and what the player is feeling. If the player was as scared as Amy is, then they'd be able to connect with her better, but because they aren't, then they just connect with her worse. They're just pulled farther away. Next up, the gameplay. It's just puzzle solving, but I do think the puzzles are pretty good. They aren't all new concepts, but you do have to think outside of the box a little bit. For example, this is a sliding puzzle, but to solve it, you have to slide to the switch, then exit and re-enter from a different angle.
It's not mind-blowing, and it's a really weird and out-of-place puzzle, but it's something.
Most of the negative reviews for Amy are about the puzzles being too difficult, but I resolutely disagree. Most people complain about the chase sequence, which sure, it's a pretty big difficulty spike, but... First, context. Here, Amy is corrupted by the blue people, which are a metaphor for depression, probably, and she chases either her friend or teacher, the player chooses. Amy runs at a pretty slow speed, but it's just fast enough that you can't just walk up to the levers in the order that you see them. You have to plan your route so that Amy doesn't end up cornering you. It requires a bit of thought, but Amy's AI isn't that great, and I got it first try after not having played the game for 3 years and forgetting the whole maze layout. And it's not like this difficulty comes out of nowhere. I didn't trick the player and have a bunch of easy puzzles right at the start. I mean, this jumping puzzle's a little easier, but I still saw a ton of Let's Players getting stuck here. I think people just don't expect RPG Maker games to be difficult ever, so only people going in are expecting a casual experience. Maybe, that's my guess. Same with the hide-and-seek puzzle right at the start. It's easier, but it's still pretty difficult. I do give a lot of hints, both visual and audio, to try and offset that.
You can see the bush rustling over there, and he giggles a little bit. You can hear the sound effect. And see, if I walk away... that you can hear Emmy, because she's over in this area. But if I walk away from both of them, I go like all the way over here. Don't hear anything.
But a lot of people missed those, and I will relent that maybe I made it too difficult to understand that you could walk back into this area.
Okay, so I said I resolutely disagreed, but I actually forgot about 2 puzzles when I wrote that into the script, and I have to relent that these 2 puzzles are fairly atrocious. Well, actually, this first one is okay. It's just that I added this sneaky insta-death option, which is just really annoying and pointless. But this one is actually horrendous. It starts off as a harmless witch's house ripoff where you have to match the 2 sides of the room, but then I decide for some ungodly reason that you have to look at this note and somehow infer that the 5 eyes add up to 5 on the keypad. This is based on I in Roman numerals equaling 1, but you'd have no idea that this is what I'm getting at unless you look at this note that's under this refrigerator, which is not marked at all, so why would anyone look there? Even still, a lot of people fairly struggled to connect these 2 notes and instead just looked at this one that was under the fridge and tried to figure out some solution from there. I tried to make the connection between the 2 notes obvious by bolding the important bits, but no reasonable person would think to look underneath this fridge, and also the Roman numeral for 5 is V, so it just kind of adds another layer of confusion because people wouldn't really be looking to add up all the eyes to equal 5.
So to everyone who whined at the chase sequence, you're a little baby, it gets much worse.
Anyways, let's move on to the mapping, which is another thing I'm really proud of. It's not without problems, though. This classroom is strangely small, this bathroom door is random and unmarked, you can walk underneath these chairs, Amy's dad walks over this tree. Where'd this purple evil corruption come from? I thought the metaphor was blue, and I'm not sure why there's this car crash here, or how Thomas didn't see it, or why it appears again at the end, or what it means at all. But otherwise, the maps range from decent to pretty freaking good. The weather, lighting, screen tints, vignettes, and parallaxes add a ton to each scene, and actually there's a wide variety of distinct environments in this game for it only being an hour long. I mean, a lot of them I just put in there because I thought they looked cool and they don't really add to the story or make any sense at all, but they look cool and it's a dream world, so it's fine.
Next on the chopping block, audio. I spent a ton of time finding free sound effects and music that I could use that all sort of fit together, and it worked out mostly alright. Some parts could use some more sound effects, and then some sound effects are almost too good. But on the whole, I'm proud of this aspect of the game.
You know, I almost forgot. The save system in this game is horrible.
You go to the detached plane to save, which sounds cool, but it doesn't mean anything in the plot, and it just serves to make all the saves look the exact same from the load menu, so you have to guess which save is correct. Also, the game auto-saves over your most recent save.
On the whole, I'm still really proud of Amy. At that point in my life, my YouTube channel was all about reviewing RPG Maker games, and I'm really glad that I could make this game to back me up as at least a sort of credible reviewer. I heard someone recently refer to me as a legend of the RPG Maker community, and while it feels a little weird, that really means a lot, and I think Amy had a really big play in that. That's also why I made it free, so that the maximum number of people could play the game and see that I sorta know my stuff. It's not the best game ever, or even in my top 10, but it's not half bad for a middle schooler, especially given the content that it covers. That said, I don't think I could probably ever make another game like this. You have to be in a really particular headspace that I just have not been in for a while. I got way better mental health now. It was good, though, to channel all of those complicated things I was feeling back in middle school into a creative outlet. I think I'm better for it. And that's all. Hope you enjoyed the video, and big thank you to my patrons. Really appreciate you.